Okay, in this video, I'm going to talk about how to build a root cellar on the cheap. So right now, you're looking at a giant tank that we got basically for free. I think we paid 500 bucks for this thing. It's an old oil tank that never got used for oil. So it's a thick wall steel tank. It's about 7 or 8 feet deep. And we were originally going to use a culvert, a 6 or 7 foot diameter culvert, but this came up and it was actually less money than the culvert. And so we sunk it into the ground. And this is actually not my idea. This is Dakota Cohen's idea. He builds root cellars out of these culverts, and they're really effective at storing carrots and beets and potatoes for all season, actually. In fact, he still has potatoes right now from last year in his root cellar that you can't even tell that they've been sitting there for 12 months. So if you get the conditions right in these spaces, it can be a really effective way at transitioning all the food that you produce in structures like passive solar greenhouses and big gardens throughout the season. People are joking when they come to visit us that we've created a sacrificial burning pit where we practice our pagan rituals, but I can assure you that that's not what's going on here. So the way that this is going to be set up is we're going to have an insulated deck on the top of it. That's going to basically create the roof for the root cellar, and that is going to double as a floor for our outdoor kitchen. So we can actually do all of our canning and cooking through the summer out here. One of the things that I hate the most is canning inside of my house because it produces so much steam and heat. I'd much rather do that outside. And then as soon as the canning is done, we can actually send it right back down into the root cellar where it's going to stay for the winter. We're going to put a series of stairs on the root cellar so that it can go down. We get easy access, either stairs or a ladder, so that we can get in there, get our stuff as required throughout the winter, and bring it back inside. Now, one of the main criteria for an effective root storage is making sure that you have a temperature range between 2 and 5 degrees Celsius and about around 70 to 80% relative humidity. Now we're going to do that through a variety of mechanisms. Number one, the steel walls on here conduct energy very effectively, and so the earth at the bottom of this steel tank is going to maintain that 3 to 5 degrees Celsius for most of the year. So that's where our refrigeration is coming from. Typically, if you were going to use a culvert, you'd have an earthen floor in here, and so the humidity would naturally percolate from up top, but this has a solid bottom, and so we weren't able to do that with this particular tank. And so what we've done is we've actually put in earth tubes. And so earth tubes are basically perforated pipes that run underground, and this has 4 earth tubes that are running from the tank under the camera for 250 feet out into the field out there. And we're going to put a small little fan on those earth tubes that will draw about 50 CFM of air on a regular basis. So CFM stands for cubic feet per minute. It's just a small slipstream of air that runs through the pipes. And because the pipes are perforated, the air, as it passes over those perforations, is actually going to pick up humidity from the soil, which will humidify the air. And then we also get additional cooling from that. Now, some people might say, well, that's a failure for a root cellar because now you need to have a constant supply of electricity to run this thing. But given that I'm an engineer and I've designed a few HVAC systems, one of my big concerns around root cellars, which I don't hear too many people addressing, is that as vegetables decompose over time, they actually emit noxious gases, or gases that can basically asphyxiate you. In fact, a friend of mine, his dad, just about died in a root cellar a couple of years ago. So I wanted to make sure that nobody dies in this root cellar, which is why we're going to have a small fan on here sucking that air through the earth tubes. Now, you could theoretically just bring in outside air, but if it's 30 degrees outside and you bring outside air in, you're going to raise the temperature of your root cellar. So if we're sucking the air through the earth tubes, then that'll allow us to bring in humidified, cool air all year round without warming or cooling the structure up, and making sure that the air inside of here is fresh and nobody's going to get asphyxiated. Now let me just go through some of those physics a little bit further. In the wintertime, let's just play a scenario out. Let's say it's minus 40 outside. Well, we don't want our root cellar going to minus 40, but we still want to have that fresh air. So air travels at minus 40 through the earth tubes. It picks up ground heat, and by the time it gets to the end of the earth tube, it's at that 2 to 5 degrees Celsius. And so the earth tube acts as a preheater, and it preheats the really cold air outside and makes sure that the root cellar doesn't freeze. In the summertime, when the air is 30 degrees Celsius, and we want to have that fresh air coming through, the 30 degrees Celsius air goes through the tube, and the air cools down as it moves through the system and comes into the root cellar. And so the earth tubes act as both a pre-cooler and a preheater depending upon the season. Now we're going to add one more really cool component into this system. It's called an economizer, and we use these in HVAC systems on commercial buildings. And so there will be times in the year when we don't want to pull air through the earth tubes. Basically, the economizer is going to allow us to choose from 2 different air streams depending upon which airstream is going to be more optimal for the root cellar. And we're going to set all this up, and we'll make a video about it so that you can do this for yourself. All in all, even if you didn't have a buddy or a neighbor that had one of these $500 tanks, a culvert really shouldn't cost you more than $1,200. It's no more than a couple hours of work for an excavator to dig a hole like this, and then you can put a shed or an outdoor kitchen or some sort of a structure over top of this. And so it really is a very cost-effective way to store all the bounty of what you've produced in the summer through the winter time. So more on this soon as we continue to construct this. And if you have any questions, please leave it in the comments section below.